I'm taking off my heels. I don't even know why I brought them. I knew I was going to do that. Happy Father's Day to all the men out there who are positive influences on children's lives, whether they're related to them or not. And to all the single parents out there, congratulations, you get 2 holidays because you're doing all the work. Also, happy solstice, happy Juneteenth, and finally, happy Pride Month. I love each and every one of my LGBTQ friends. You make the world and my life better by existing. As many of you know, my name is Reverend Jessica Peterson, but I go by Trinity, which is a long story for another day. And I'm getting my doctorate in divinity through Emerson Institute of Atlanta, Georgia. More importantly, I am a person in recovery from trauma and subsequent addiction, a mother, a registered behavioral technician working with children on the autism spectrum, as well as a person on that same spectrum myself. Firstly, I would like to announce that, and I feel this is brag-worthy, I did not use AI in writing this sermon. It came completely from my brain because I refuse to dumb down what I have to say by having a computer spit out flowery verbiage while ruining our water supply. Secondly, I would like to thank Martha for working with me to piece together this service, even if it may be a little clunky. Your hard work is noticed, and your dedication to this church is applauded. And thanks for Mo and Matilda for lighting the chalice. And setting the energy of the room in motion today. This is a sacred container we sit in, and our time in communion has a profound positive impact on how the rest of my week follows. So thank you to everyone who's here who took the time out on a Sunday to show up. In the spring of my 14th year, right around the end of May, I was on one of my quarterly trips to visit my grandparents in the Black Hills of South Dakota. At dinner, Grandpa Ken, Grandma Zona, and I sat around the kitchen table, without a doubt eating the green bean casserole that she always made me every time I visited because it was my favorite. Looking up from the plate, my grandfather gave me a sly grin with a twinkle in his eye and said, "Jess, tomorrow we're going fishing." I bought a new boat, and I thought you might like to try fishing from the middle of the lake instead of shore fishing this time around. I was so excited. I loved going fishing with my grandfather. Those sunny days where he hooked the worms because I was too grossed out and felt bad for the worm, where we cast our lines and sat and talked for hours, are some of my favorite memories to this day. He always had the best advice and listened to me like no one else ever did. Plus, bringing home dinner that I triumphantly caught made me feel some primal pride as I showed it off to my grandmother that afternoon. I could hardly wait to get onto that boat, get into the middle of the lake, and see how many fish I could catch. The next morning, right as the first rays of sunshine were peeking over the horizon, I got into my grandfather's Dodge Dynasty, a boat in its own right. Later that day, when the fishing fun was over, Grandpa Ken was going to teach me how to drive a car for the first time. It was going to be a fantastic day. We pulled away from the house and headed down the road, and I thought it odd that I saw no boat to hitch to the car and pull behind us. So I assumed that it must already be at the reservoir on the property we'd be fishing at. I'm not sure how long of a drive it was, but there was our ceremonial stop at the gas station for coffee, beef jerky, sunflower seeds, or honey roasted peanuts. In the back seat was the cooler where Grandma Zona had packed our lunch, probably sandwiches and a few sodas and chips. The tackle box had already been loaded into the trunk, along with the fishing poles by Grandpa Ken the night before. We would sing songs together along with sing songs together, or he would sing songs that he made up, like, it's peach picking time in Georgia, it's cotton picking time in Tennessee, it's nose picking time in South Dakota, so why is everyone picking on me? Or, as a 14-year-old chatterbox, I would talk nonstop without breathing about the goings-on at school or my problems I was having with my friends or at home, or about the newest songs that I was learning in choir, and obviously I had to sing them in the car to him because he just simply could not make the concert. It wasn't 30 minutes before the Black Hills were behind us and the sun was starting to glint off the golden crops growing for miles and miles on either side of the highway. We would turn off of the interstate onto a highway, from a highway to a small road, then on to a dirt road, and then we would pull up to the spot next to the reservoir that would serve as our fishing grounds for the remainder of the morning. Only there was a problem. I still did not see a boat. Grandpa, where is the boat that you said you'd bought? Did you forget it? I asked Grandpa Ken as I looked around to see nothing but a small body of water and fields of prairie grass. No buildings or humans or even animals in sight save for the few birds flitting in the air. Grandpa Ken opened the car door and looked back at me with a crooked grin he'd had the night before. It's in the trunk, kid. How's it in the trunk? He let out a big belly laugh and said, we gotta blow it up. Come out and help me get everything out of the car. Grandpa popped open the trunk and I peered in to find the tackle box and poles, a hand pump for a bicycle tire, and a relatively small box with a picture of an inflatable raft staring up at me. I looked at the box, then at my grandfather, and admittedly I was a little disappointed that we weren't going to be on an aluminum boat with a motor, but when I was with Grandpa, it was always a good time. So I grabbed the box and my pole and I set them on the ground by the shoreline and started to open the box so that we could inflate it. 20 minutes later, the boat was inflated and I held it in place in the water as Grandpa Ken and I put the tackle box and the poles, and he handed me the life preserver that Grandma Zona insisted I wear while I was on the boat. After getting into my life jacket and climbing into the boat with the gear that Grandpa Ken held the boat steady, he proceeded to climb into the vessel. The next sound I heard could only be described as whoomp. Now is about the time when I inform you that my Grandpa Ken was 6 foot 6 inches tall and over 300 pounds. The moment he got in, the boat's sides curled up around us and left nothing to keep us anchored. We cast off into the middle of the lake. A bright yellow inflatable burrito with the skinny ends of our fishing poles sticking out along with our arms on either side. Shocked at what had just happened and floating in a little circle in the center of the reservoir, I looked at the sky for a few minutes, and I'm assuming Grandpa did the same. Just the blue sky with white fluffy clouds circling above us and absolutely no humans for miles and miles to help us. We made a futile attempt to try to steer the boat with our hands, but we only managed to make our circle turns faster and made zero headway toward the shore. Finally, I said, Grandpa, what are we going to do? Grandpa managed to slide his arm beside him and shoved the floor of the raft down as he fiddled with the lid of the tackle box. We're here to fish. Let's fish. He grabbed a worm, put it on my hook, and handed me a pole. Then he did the same with his, and wouldn't you know it, we caught 23 bluegill and 4 bigmouth bass that day. Of course, we had to line them alongside our bodies because there was nowhere else to keep them otherwise, and dinner was at risk of being KFC that night if we had failed. Finally, the current of the lake gently carried our burrito boat back to shore, and we were able to get out, put the fish in a cooler, and head back home, where we had one of the most memorable meals of my life because we had earned that fish fry that day. Y'all, I was so sunburned. On Sunday, my grandfather, a Methodist minister, gave his sermon complete with the story of our burrito boat experience to my humiliation, tying it in, as he eloquently did so often, with a life lesson about not taking life too seriously. His influence on his community was something that he always pressed upon me growing up. Always strive to make wherever you land better than when you found it, and you'll be doing God's work, he would say. It's a principle that I live by to this day. One quirky thing about my Grandpa Ken is that he also identified as a Buddhist. He was always reading from other spiritual literature from various religions, philosophers, and scientific journals. In fact, he was the one who introduced me to the story of all ages that we read earlier in the service. He never judged another based on their preferred way in which they chose to worship, or whether they chose to worship at all. And being a huge advocate of the gay community, to the tune of wearing a rainbow stole to the Regional Methodist Convention back in the early 80s,
Wow.
to stand up for the right for anyone to marry who they choose. And his insistence on treating people with equanimity and not judging them on the traits they were born with, such as the color of their skin or various disabilities, has influenced me from an early age to do the same. God is found everywhere you look, through every human being's eyes, and on every path you walk, he would tell me. In fact, it was his open-minded attitude that helped me develop a relationship that I have with my higher power. One where God doesn't care what labels you put on it, or what name you call him or her by, or what gender you assign it. After all, who am I to put God in a box? I have found so much grace, serenity, and freedom in that sentiment, all of which was passed down by my grandfather. My grandfather was by no means perfect. Hearing tales from my aunts and uncles, he could be downright mean if you had gotten out of line in any way, and I'm not sure what changed from the time he was raising them to the time I came into the world, but I'm really glad that it did, because his presence in my life, along with my father, Dr. Kim Peterson, and my grandpa, Kermit Peterson, was what got me through some of the hardships that were to come to me later in my adulthood. I'm not going to lie to you. This was a hard topic for me to take on. In the last few years, more and more truths have come to light about how large groups of certain men have conducted themselves in our society. Most know exactly what I'm talking about, and I am not going to dignify it by naming them here. Nor am I going to deny that the feminine side of our society has its own toxic traits. In my spiritual tradition, we have a saying, as above, so below. My own personal life has been fraught with dealing with massive betrayal, and as a person who has suffered from domestic violence at the hands of certain men in my life, this sermon has been challenging for me to write, given our current understanding and subsequent righteous anger at the current events that have been brought to light. Personally, I've taken a lot of time out of romantic relationships to focus on myself, as the hurt from my past has given me a bitter taste in my mouth towards my relationships with men. However, Spirit nudged me to take on this challenge. As I was talking with a friend about what this sermon was going to be about, the celebration of men who are doing it right in the world, her comment to me was, "Don't you think it's laughable that men get so many accolades for doing the bare minimum?" When I asked what she meant, she said, "Well, when a man is watching his children after work so mom can go out, he's babysitting." As if it's not his responsibility to watch his own kids. I agree. I myself am a single mother, and I'm not getting cheered on from the sidelines for earning an income or providing financial security for my family. In fact, it's more that I get judged for not keeping a tidy home, like a woman should. FYI, I'm a horrible housekeeper, whether I'm married or not, so. And I often joke that I maybe need a house husband to take care of everything else that while I earn an income. It would literally reduce my stress and load of responsibility by over 50%. However, that's judging the reactions of the people who are watching the dad do his thing, and the father may very well just assume the responsibility for their children without the expectation of applause. And quite frankly, those are the men I'm celebrating today. The ones who wake up at 2 a.m. to take his turn for diaper changing and bottle feeding so mom can get at least 5 hours of sleep in a row. The ones who show up for their kids' recitals and plays even though they cannot stand classical music or Broadway. The ones who make dinner and do 50% of the household chores because mom works too. The ones who take time to focus on helping their daughters wash their hands in the women's bathroom because they have no other choice, even when people in the background are harassing them as they do so. The ones who respect their wives as whole people instead of objectifying them or using the words protect and provide when they really mean manipulation and control. The ones that understand that their children, as well as other people, are being influenced by the example they set, so they choose to set a good one. And despite the fact that there are days when I am bombarded with sexism, racism, and overall bigotry to such a degree that, in my opinion, can only be described as systemic mental illness, I know that good men exist out there because of the example first set by my grandfathers and my father. And when I was an adult and had been so traumatized by my spouse, I turned to prayer and I asked God, if there are still good men out there, show them to me. A few days later, I met Dr. Daniel Gray. And then I started attending church and met men like Michael Williams and the rest of the men in this congregation. I was introduced to my great friends Christopher Williams, Fred Bauerlein, Robert Wright, Tyler Hawkins, Josh Hoggood, Michael Saxton, and Carlos Rodriguez. There are many more that I cannot name due to respect for anonymity that I've met in my 12-step program, but one I will mention is Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, though he was dead 8 years before I was born. I still consider him to be a father figure in my life. All of these men, both living and deceased, share one thing in common. They live by spiritual principles, pass a message of hope, and see the value of a woman as a whole person and not just for her gender or for what they can do for them. Furthermore, as for the living men in my life, they demonstrate respect, kindness, compassion, and open-mindedness towards others that I've seen them interact with. As a woman who has been given every excuse to write off half of the human population, my higher power brought them into my life as a living example that there are still good men out there. And that has been the key component to both my recovery from trauma and my recovery from substance use in general. As it goes with most of the divine missions given to us earthlings, we are, for the most part, unaware of what we are doing or how important of an impact we have on those around us by simply being ourselves as we are wandering down these winding roads of our life. Unless, that is, what we do is acknowledged and thanked. So, for the men I just called out by name, and for those who I couldn't, but they know who they are, I say this: I see you, I am inspired by you, and most of all, I thank you for being exactly who you are in this moment that we are together. You are literally an answered prayer. During meditation, as I communicated my concerns about the current state of affairs in this country and in my own life, I was shown two paths that we can all go down. One, where the wounded heart that's been buried under trauma, toxicity, and betrayal hardens and calcifies. On the other path, the heart heals and becomes a light with golden flame, beating with immense love for our fellow man despite the pain. We all individually have a choice in this matter. Our repulsion to what has been done is a glorious sign of our awakening and is brought about by the confusing feelings left behind as horrible truths are revealed about people we may have once held in high regard. There is a sense of safety living in the delusion that people are all good or all bad. We are like children who have hit the universal threshold of learning that their parents, that they once held as all-knowing and perfect, are mere mortals, humans who have made mistakes, sometimes very big ones. What we do with this information is up to the individual, and some choose to unknowingly repeat those mistakes that their parents made. After all, if mom and dad can do it, why can't I? Still, there are others who, in light of what's been done, choose an act of rebellion, vowing to never make those same mistakes. The second route is a tough road, as we must very often unlearn some, if not all, of what we've been taught, how to navigate this life, by the people who failed at doing so for themselves, sometimes quite spectacularly. This road is full of pitfalls and often feels like navigating in a thick fog where we cannot see how our next step should be taken. And when the frustration sets in of not knowing how to do such things, such as not objectifying others, when that seems to be the norm, we can lose our resolve to carry that torch any farther. We can become hardened, shrinking into ourselves, refusing to come out into the sunshine and mingle with others. We may project our pain onto others, being filled with the desire of wanting nothing more than to find the joy within this life and to share that joy with others, yet not knowing how or where to find either the joy or the community in which the act of sharing is embraced, authenticity is celebrated, and safety is standard. It is at this stage of awakening when we realize that we may well need to be the builders of this community and the bringers of such joy. We must take a leap of faith, using the light we find within as a torch to light the way as we move forward. But in doing so, in taking that leap into the beyond, something truly miraculous happens. We may not know who is behind us making the same decision that we have to make radical changes in their own lives, and who, encountering the same thick fog, may be using the light from the torch we carry as a guide because their own light had been snuffed out long ago. We can use our light to reignite their burnt out torch. In turn, when the torch they carry is combined with the torches we carry, yet others behind us, whom we may or may not see, can use that magnified light to more easily find their way, to ignite their own light. Enough torches, each following one another, amplify the heat in the room, thus lifting that thick fog we walk through, clearing the way for yet more people making that same decision. Our choice to carry that little light of ours may very well be the most important factor in the solution to all of this. Though the flame of a single candle may be dim, it can light another, and as we light the candles around us, we light an entire room. And when more rooms full of candles that are lit by one another, we exponentially light up the dark night of so many lost souls. This little flame is a mighty force for good. May it never be extinguished. Our children are watching and following in our footsteps, alongside others who we do not even know are being inspired by observing the example we set and to take that leap of faith into the fog. This is what I believe Jesus meant when he said that he would make us fishers of men. After all, we're all stuck in this burrito boat together. We may as well fish. Thank you. Do you want me to turn on the thing? Oh, with the candle? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Spacebar.
No, I'm looking for that is it, okay. All right, so we are going to do something a little different for Joys and Concerns. In honor of my grandpa Ken, who so influenced me, this candle is for him. And what I would like to do is this is kind of experiential therapy. Yay, I'm using my psychology degree. So we're going to each come up and light a candle for either your father or your grandfather, men who have influenced you in your life, and just to show that one little light can impact and light a room. So I'll play the music and everybody can come forward.
Maybe we could start with this first row. Yeah.
And I don't have music. Oh, that's why.
Michael Williams, yeah, and my pastor, Paul.